Some will recall past generations of Jews gathering year after year in this sacred space. Others may well recall where we were for the High Holy Days 20 years ago, when in the days immediately following the attacks of September 11th, 20 years ago this week, Jews the world over gathered for a new year, faintly concussed by the combination of so much sudden loss of both human life and, on the morning of 9/11, the loss of so much of our innocence and sense of safety. As we absorbed then what it meant to feel suddenly vulnerable in an altogether new way, and to feel ourselves on a war footing for the first time since 80 years ago this year, when our forces were attacked in Pearl Harbor in 1941, and now as we enter the High Holy Days of 2021, as we gather in our sanctuary here, and as so many gather in what our tradition refers to as our Mikdash Ma'at, our sanctuaries in our homes, not only are we aware of how different our world and our lives are from 80 years ago, when our forces were attacked in the Pacific, and how different our world and our lives are today from just 20 years ago, when our nation was again attacked, this time in multiple locations on the East Coast. And we cannot help but to be aware of how much has changed since Pittsburgh's Jewish community was attacked some almost 36 months ago on an otherwise unremarkable Shabbat morning. And still we mourn as a community those 11 lives, and once more the loss of our innocence, as again we felt exposed and vulnerable and frightened. And tonight, we are so well aware of how different our world has become in just these last 18 months, before ever we knew of COVID or quarantines or contact tracing, before ever we imagined it would be necessary to socially distance or to show proof of vaccination in order to gain admittance to be here one with another, in our masks or at home, safely attending services via streaming for fear of gathering in greater numbers. Yet on this night of Erev Rosh Hashanah, amidst so much that has changed and so much that is frustratingly and frighteningly different than was true just a short time ago, as we prepare to leave a year of tremendous challenge and change to enter a new year, we ought remember a timeless truth drawn from deep within our Jewish tradition that speaks to the ever-timely and urgent responsibility that Judaism insists each of us has for ensuring that in the time we are afforded, we appreciate all that we do have, and that this sense of gratitude might lead us to be blessings in the world. And this is what I would like to share with you this evening on this first night of a new year, amidst all that has changed in our lifetimes and all that has changed in the last 2 decades, amidst all that has changed for each of us in the last 2 to 3 years alone, to say nothing of the last year and a half in particular. I want to share with you a truth our tradition teaches is forever unchanged. We could be excused for asking, is there truly anything that will always be constant? Are there any words that we might offer or actions that we might perform that would necessarily be true, would be appropriate in every circumstance? Are in this current time of our distress, of course, not the first to ask such questions. Indeed, the same query, what is certain, what can be sure is always true? These very same questions are at the heart of a beloved fable from Jewish folklore told of the wisest of all monarchs. Here's the story. King Solomon, in a time of persistent challenge, asked his most trusted advisor and friend to set out on a special mission on behalf of the Jewish people. Said he, "The times are increasingly challenging and difficult, and they are certain to continue in this way for a while more. I am told," said King Solomon, "I am told that there is a ring with special powers. I want you to locate this ring and bring it to me. I give you such and such a length of time to find it and to return with it." Solomon's trusted friend replied, "If it exists, I will find it. I will bring it to you. But how shall I know when I have found it? What is so special about this ring?" "Ah, this ring has a special quality," King Solomon replied. "It is inscribed with words that are true in all times, both good and bad. Indeed, the power of these words are such that if one is happy and reads them, such a person becomes sad. And if a sad person reads the same words, they become happy." Many difficult seasons passed, one after another, and through it all, Solomon's emissary traversed the land and tried to remain faithful and true to his task. But he was growing weary. The months and the years took their toll, and he was understandably growing depleted. For seemingly, he had all but exhausted the denizens of artisans and any dozens of boutiques where he believed a ring engraved with such special powers might be found. And then, just as another year was ending, the king's courtier decided to take a walk through one of the poorest neighborhoods in Jerusalem. As he was that day preoccupied with thoughts of his own troubles, and of all he lacked, and of all he had gone so long without, empty-handed was he as of a message that would alter his mood. Solomon's once haughty messenger nearly passed by a humble merchant on the sidewalk, who on a shabby piece of carpet laid down at the side of the street had only just begun to set out his day's random wares. By now the exhausted minister inquired of the erstwhile jeweler, "Adoni, good sir, your humble servant wonders if," he paused, "I don't imagine if you would," and then the words tumbled out, "perchance might you know of a ring engraved with writing upon it that has the power to make a happy wearer forget their joy and the brokenhearted forget their sorrow?" At this, the merchant silently reached out a bony hand amidst his many beauties and baubles and laid upon a small, simple band upon which were written 3 small words. And when the all but dejected minister read these 3 words, his own disheartened face broke out into an understanding and knowing, wide and wise smile. That night, when he returned to King Solomon, happily he was welcomed and he was greeted with great excitement. Not unlike, if you will, perhaps the way we are this night gathered to welcome a new year with our own sense of expectation and similarly high hopes. "We have waited a long while for you," the king began. "The time since last we saw you have been difficult. Have you found what I asked of you? Does it indeed do as we hope? Truly, have you found a ring so engraved that it will make the happy one sad and the sad one happy, and therefore within it is contained a truth that will hold up in every circumstance forever?" "Yes, I believe I have," declared the manservant, "and yes, I believe it will." Thereupon he presented to Solomon a ring with the following 3-word inscription. Gam zeh ya'avor, it said in Hebrew. In English, "This too shall pass." At that moment, King Solomon of old realized what we all know to be true. The human story is a lesson of impermanence. Life is fleeting and frightening, precious and pernicious. All we have and all we are is here one day and becomes a memory the next. Therefore, Judaism teaches, and as we enter a new year, we reaffirm this night, the one constant in life is impermanence, and therefore we must be grateful every day for all that we have. My friends, pandemics, age-old, follow a certain pattern. They all but spontaneously break out, insidiously, then violently wreak havoc upon a population, and then they spread across the countryside, or in our generation, spiral around the globe. Always the casualties are legion, and the scars left upon survivors are visible for years to come. To a person, the experts report, all who live through a pandemic describe a time before the terrifying realities and a time after they recede, as if all have lived through a war. And we know this because there are always survivors, as are all of us this day ourselves. Survivors, pandemics, as with all things, come to an end. We are not there yet, but pandemics end, perhaps not as we would wish them to, nor as quickly, but as with all things, pandemics end. Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass. Make no mistake, the virus with which we are now contending will never fully be eradicated. The idea of reaching zero transfer within a population should be considered neither a goal nor a realistic possibility. However, in time, as enough of us gain immunity, infection, or vaccination, the virus that has plagued us for more than a year and a half will not magically, but eventually become a recurring, dare I say, normal part of our lives. The coronavirus that causes COVID-19 and which has caused such chaos the world over, this virus will eventually become endemic, much like its 4 coronavirus cousins that caused the common colds. And as a population, having been exposed to this contagion over time, and having made a tenuous peace with the threats of daily living, we will no longer be nor feel ourselves vulnerable in the same ways we experience today. And over time, the coronavirus will no longer be novel, and our fears of what it means to live with this virus will grow to be less, not because the virus has changed, but because we have. And then, Gam ze ya'avor, we shall say, this too has passed. As with all things, thank God, so too with this pandemic, and so too with our own panic. Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass, and let us be ever grateful for that. When we find ourselves in the middle of something all-consuming, understandably it can be hard to imagine that it could ever end. Whether ours is overwhelming joy or crushing sadness, it can feel at times, it can be hard to remember that our current experience on any given day could be any other way, or that life could in any way be different again. And yet, on this night of new beginnings, we are enjoined to see the arrival of the High Holy Days as a reminder of the perennial truth of impermanence, as well as of our obligation to be grateful. For it has been the embrace of this very truth by our people that has allowed us to transcend the darkest days of yesteryear. And so will it be this same truth and our response to it that will permit us to best the threats of this past year and to deal forthrightly with the concerns we bring with us that are weighing heavily upon our hearts this night as we enter the year, and to be grateful in our so doing. Our accepting embrace of this immutable truth is that which shall allow us to continue, come whatever may, to continue to bring blessings of gratitude into our lives and into the lives of those with whom we share our lives every day, by making our world better today than it was yesterday, and better tomorrow still. The story of King Solomon and the ring reminds us that whether it is a joyous time in our life or a terribly sad, challenging, and frightening one, there is one immutable truth. Gamze Ya'avor. This too shall pass. So let us be grateful for what we have and for what is ours today. My dear friends, as we stand on the edge of a new year, I'm reminded of the Israelites standing at the edge of the promised land, fearful and full of trepidation. Amid so much change, uncertainty, and fear, God reminds our ancestors as they stand at the edge of the land of promise, reminds them of how much potential exists before them for discovery and for personal renewal, and even so, how much there is for which they have this very day to be forever grateful. How many blessings we have, how many mitzvot we have yet to fulfill in the certainly fleeting, frustratingly certain, and potentially blessed span of years we are afforded. Life's one constant truth is change. So let us be forever grateful for all we have as we enter this new year. May 5782 be for each and every one of us a year of health and a year of healing, a year of gratitude and generous blessings. Shana Tova.